next question right here.
Shaq, let's just say that a snake bit your mom right up here, right in the chest area. Would you be willing to suck the venom out to win the title?
No, but I will with your wife.
Thank you, Shaq. Quote sheets will be available at the...
All right, what is good, everybody? Welcome back to Ball Don't Lie, week number 2 here for the podcast this semester. Obviously, as you can tell, we are not in the studio. Hopefully, we'll be able to next week. We'll see, given the circumstances that we're currently in. Matt, I don't know if you know this, but this is actually our 20th episode of Ball Don't Lie. Not between us, but just from the start to finish. So, crazy it's been 20 episodes, I guess.
Yeah, 20 episodes. That's a pretty big milestone there. I thought you said I had done 20, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I think this is like maybe my 5th, but I'm not sure. Yes, pretty cool. 20 episodes.
Yeah, I believe it was 20. I believe the last one was 19. I hope I'm not wrong on that. I'd look really stupid otherwise. Anyways, though, there's a lot of NBA action last night. There's no games tonight, but there will be tomorrow, Friday night. We're putting this on a Wednesday. First, we're going to start with our Around the Association. And let's talk about Nick Nurse. Despite losing Game 7 to the Boston Celtics, the Raptors do extend him, and he has the highest win percentage amongst any head coach in NBA history. I don't think we're really going to debate this one, but I do want to say that this is probably as well-deserved of a contract extension as I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously winning the NBA Finals last year, his first season as the coach, and then, of course, winning Coach of the Year this year. The fact they got to 7 games with this team is an accomplishment to me. You know, playing Boston. Boston is a far superior team in terms of talent and has been one of the best teams in the bubble. Doing what Nick Nurse has done this year with this roster after losing Kawhi, there's a reason he won Coach of the Year, and he definitely deserved this extension.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, what he was able to do losing, a guy who had one of the greatest playoff runs we've ever seen. And then still being able to win a ton of games. And like we said, 111 wins in his first 2 seasons as a head coach. That is really, really impressive. Also, too, we'll talk about the Raptors a little bit later also, but one of the reporters actually called out Pascal Siakam and basically flat out said, "Why'd you play so bad this series?" Was that warranted? Was that too much? Or do you think that was, pretty necessary?
In terms of, coming from a media member, he should probably keep it a little bit more professional. Probably shouldn't call out players. But, he was a little bit warranted because Pascal Siakam did struggle a lot. In the final 3 games of the series, he scored 10, 12, and 13 points on 15 of 40 shooting. The dude stunk when his team needed him the most. He looked nothing like the guy they gave big money to after his performance in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Again, we'll get into the Raptors a little bit later, but thought that was a little funny nugget to put in there. And then also Giannis unfollowing all of his teammates on Instagram. Not to sound like BuzzFeed here, but I thought it was a little interesting. Apparently, the Bucks organization and Giannis are expected to have a meeting in the coming days. Bucks saying they're willing to spend money in the luxury tax, which means they're willing to make acquisitions and sign more pieces as well. What do you make of this whole situation?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. This is definitely like a this league moment, but you brought up the meeting that he's set to have once he gets back from vacation. They did have a 3-hour meeting this past weekend. I do believe just a basis meeting. And basically, they talked about roster construction for next year and what his plans might be going into free agency. It'll be interesting to see whether he commits to them or not.
Yeah, definitely. Again, Giannis still has one more year on his current deal. We'll see if he tries to do what Anthony Davis did and try to get traded on that final deal, or maybe he sticks out with the Bucks. Bucks, nevertheless, though, probably have to make some sort of move because I don't think they want to settle for mediocrity, definitely. And we did call it on this podcast, not that it was a super shock or anything, but we both were pretty confident Mike D'Antoni wasn't going to return to the Houston Rockets. And he didn't even get fired. He straight up was just like, "I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore." So I guess the question is, Mike D'Antoni's an older head coach, one of the older ones in the NBA. Do you think he's going to get another head coaching job soon?
I think he will, just because he's one of the more big names in the game. He's coached so many teams, so many great players. He's got a lot out of those good players in terms of offensive production, not so much defensively, but offensively he definitely has. I think he'll definitely get another job, whether it's been, he's been rumored to Indiana and now the Sixers. If he coaches the Sixers, Ben Simmons will shoot like 10 threes a game. So I think he'll definitely get another job, just a matter of where.
Yeah, it's a good point. The Sixers would be a really interesting team. They'd have to completely regut that team to fit D'Antoni's system.
That'd be a weird fit.
I think Ben Simmons could actually work there, but I'm not sure Embiid does as much. I mean, they literally just traded their center in Houston. They traded Clint Capella. They literally didn't have one. And Embiid is a low post player. Ben Simmons can run up and down the floor though, so I think he'd fit. But you need some more shooters there. I think to make that work. So I think bringing a guy like Mike D'Antoni, we saw it not really work with the Knicks or the Lakers, and it's because they didn't fully commit to building the team. But it worked in Phoenix and it worked in Houston. I mean, he was a really good coach there. They won a lot of games, just couldn't win some of those big ones. And some of that could be on him, some of it could be on Harden or Westbrook and stuff like that. But I do agree. I think he gets another head coaching job. I think Indiana's a good spot potentially. I think they got some guys there, although he won't have a James Harden to bail him out. But also, too, the Rockets want to build a new culture, if you will. Jeff Van Gundy and Ty Lue are some of the potential candidates' names that have been thrown around. I want to know, who do you think Houston's going to ultimately go after, Matt?
I do think that Ty Lue is probably the top of their list just because he has that championship pedigree. He is highly respected around the league. I think he'd bring in a good culture in terms of James Harden and Russell Westbrook, getting them to mesh together a little bit well, getting Westbrook to not turn the ball over 10 times a game, maybe just get a little bit more consistency offensively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I like Ty Lue hiring. I think that could potentially be a nice spot there. I'm pretty confident he'll get a head coaching job with someone sometime soon. Also, too, yesterday, as in Tuesday night, the All-NBA rookie teams were announced. I thought there was a little bit of a surprise or two. Obviously, John Morant, I believe, was unanimous. Zion Williamson, Kendrick Nunn, undrafted player, making first team. Brandon Clark, another former first-round pick. He went in the 20s. He also got there for Memphis. That's two Memphis players on the first team all-rookie. And Eric Pascal, a second-round pick for the Golden State Warriors, rounding out the first team. I don't think this would have been our predictions entering the year, how first team was going to play out.
Definitely not. John Morant and Zion Williamson were definitely the two guys we expected to be there, but guys like Nunn, Clark, and Pascal was on nobody's radar. I think the one that surprises me the most, not in terms of, based on their production this year, but heading into the year and looking at the results now, Eric Pascal, a second-round guy, playing for a team like Golden State that is stacked, top-heavy with Curry and Draymond Green. We knew Klay Thompson was going to be out. But just the fact that he's even on this list, he got so much playing time once those guys went down for a young team that struggled, and he was really a bright spot for them. It really earned his way onto the roster.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I think he could definitely be a piece for that team moving forward. I mean, obviously, he's not going to probably average the numbers he did for, when Curry and Klay Thompson are back, and maybe they even add other guys. But I think he proved that he can be a good rotation player for them. And I think for the Warriors, that's a win, getting that in the second round. And second team as well, another Miami Heat player, Tyler Hero, made second team. Also had another former Wildcat and PJ Washington as well from Charlotte. Rui Hachimura, so that's two Gonzaga players making all rookie teams. Kobe White for the Chicago Bulls. And Terrence Davis, another undrafted free agent, making it for the Toronto Raptors as well. I think, again, probably a couple more shocks here also.
Yeah, I think Terrence Davis is one of the ones that surprises me. I honestly didn't hear that much about him this year. He was a decent rotation player for him. I don't know how much he played in the playoffs, but in terms of, second team all-rookie team, maybe a snub, my Sixer guy, Matisse Thybulle. I know he didn't do much offensively, but he was fantastic defensively, rated as one of the best guards and wings in the league this year defensively. So maybe a little bit of a snub there, but maybe also a homer pick.
I can agree with you on that one, honestly. I mean, again, Matisse Thybulle, his value, and entering the draft, his value was in his defense. And I think he actually showed more offensively than I even thought he would coming out of Washington. So I think I would probably have put him over Terrence Davis. Terrence Davis, again, had a really good year, undrafted player out of Ole Miss. But Matisse Thybulle, I think, was a little more valuable to what the Sixers were doing than maybe Terrence Davis was, perhaps. He didn't really get a whole lot of minutes in the playoffs, whereas Thybulle did. Second team-wise, I actually did have Brandon Clark making all rookie first team. That was on this. I said it on this podcast, so I got that one right. But I think if this was including the postseason, I'd put Tyler Hero over Kendrick Nunn. But Hero missed a lot of games in the regular season, so I understand that one. You're gonna probably roll your eyes here, but I think RJ Barrett not making even second team is a little. I mean, come on, second team. You're telling me he couldn't make second team? I think he was like third amongst rookies in scoring or fourth. Like,
I'm looking up his field goal percentage right now. I can't stand this.
all right, all right. Look, I'm not saying he's as
got
good
40%
as.
field.
Okay, well, the Knicks had nobody there, all right? He probably had to take hard contested shots every single time he had the ball. They have no playmakers on that team, okay? I thought RJ Barrett should have –
Shooter. I don't want to hear it anymore, Hunter. I'm not.
he should have made second team All-NBA, okay? You're telling me that Rui Hachimura is better than RJ Barrett? Get out of here. Stop it. That would be my only thing. And then maybe Matisse Thybulle deserves a spot too. And then last but not least, quick here, Sean Livingston becoming a Warriors exec. Basically, his job description in the front office, he's going to be like a director, helping with player affairs and engagement. I mean, the Warriors, I will say, I think they treat their like former players as well as any organization does.
Yeah, I agree with that too. It seems like they're doing everything they can to hold on to their glory days, bringing back the band for one last go around here. But in all seriousness, Livingston is a highly respected individual around the league from what he's gone through in his career with that devastating injury he had with the Clippers, working his way all the way back to win 3 championships with the Warriors. The Warriors are definitely taking care of him, and he was like a glue guy for them off the bench.
Yeah, that's a good point. They are taking care of him, and great to see what he does with them, as a exec. But also, last but not least, the saying on this podcast, no team gets left behind, and nor should RJ Barrett.
We can leave RJ there.
All right. Yeah, come on. I had to throw that in there. Anyways, though, we're going to be giving our players of the week. Obviously, we saw some players really rise up to the occasion during these playoffs. Matt, I'll let you go first. Who is first on your list?
Well, I think this guy is the most obvious guy for me over the past week. Nikola Jokic, 24 points per game, 13 rebounds per game, 6.5 assists per game in the Clippers series, including a triple-double in last night's Game 7. Shocker. And he did that in the first 3 quarters of the game. He proved he's a star. He's a big-time performer in the playoffs. Every playoff series he's played in, they've gotten to 7 games. I don't know where this slander was coming from that he wasn't a big-time performer, but he's proved everybody wrong.
Yeah, he absolutely has, and I like seeing like Jokic in these like when he's down series because he starts getting a little more aggressive and starts taking shots. He's not as passive, and he looks to kind of get his, and then that's really the definition of being a leader. So, in every playoff series he's been great. So I agree with you. He's also on my list, but I kind of cheated because I had 4 players because I couldn't really pick between Jokic and Jamal Murray because Jamal Murray last night with that 40 points. Game 7, that's as clutch as it possibly gets. And we'll talk about the Nuggets a lot later on this podcast, but both of those guys I thought were equally deserving. I couldn't leave one off. They both had to get a spot for me.
Yeah, Jamal Murray absolutely balled out. He's been clutch for them this whole playoffs. Obviously he started in the Jazz series, but last night he was the best he's played. They said he used last year's Game 7 against Portland as motivation because he struggled last year in that game. So he used that as motivation to perform much better this year.
Yeah, he is playing very motivated. I think that's a nice term to put it as. Matt, who else is on your list?
This one hurts me to my core, but Marcus Smart. He's had 6 threes in 2 of his past 3 games, 26 points in Game 1 last night. He's really stepped up and been everything the Celtics have needed from him and so much more. Obviously they pay him to be their lockdown guy on defense, first team all defense guy, but the fact that they're getting 26 points from him, 6 threes a game, you're getting more value than you should from him.
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously, Marcus Smart is known as the defensive stopper of that team, kind of the heart and soul of that team, but not really one of their primary scorers per se, probably about 4th option on the team, 5th when Gordon Hayward's in. But now he's getting buckets too, and he's playing like it. So when he's playing really well on both ends of the floor, that's another weapon that the Celtics have at their disposal. I had him on my player of the week last week, but I have another Celtic on my list. That's going to be Jason Tatum. The way he closed out Game 7, I believe he's the youngest player since Kobe to have 25, 10, and 7. That's points, rebounds, assists in a playoff game, Game 7. So he stepped up when they needed him to. I think he has proved that he can be a legitimate number one option for a championship team.
Yeah, I think year 3 has been the year that he's taken that big step from really good player to possibly being an elite player, and really, ending that discussion for him.
I just saw this now. Who do you think's a better player, Jason Tatum or Paul George?
Jason
It's
Tatum.
tough. I think I'm going Jason Tatum too. I think I am too.
He's more clutch than Paul George, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always had that debate. Like, I don't know who's better, but I think I'm going Tatum now. All right, and then Matt, last but not least, who is third on your list?
Bam Adebayo, just based off of his play from last night, one of the most incredible blocks in postseason history, probably since the LeBron block in 2016 against the Warriors. He also was able to add 18 points, 6 rebounds, and a whopping 9 assists for a big man. And he also locked down Daniel Tice, holding him to just 4 points and 4 rebounds in 35 minutes.
Oh, man, locking down Daniel Tice. That's the key for the Miami this series. Yeah, Bam Adebayo is phenomenal. Again, he's not always the highest scoring guy, but he just always makes the right play. And he's always in the right position. He plays hard all 48 minutes. And like you said, Matt, he made one of the key, probably the key play of the game, alongside Jimmy Butler's and one as well. But, Jason Tatum tried to put the refs in a situation to make a call. You couldn't make a call there. That was as clean of a block as I've ever seen. So he made an awesome play, and that ultimately led to the Game 1 victory there. My last player of the week, I never thought this guy was going to be on my list, but Markieff Morris for the Lakers really stepped up in that Houston Rockets series. I mean, look, I'm not saying he had one of the 3 best weeks, but, they put him in the starting lineup because Houston obviously plays super small. They moved AD to the 5. And Markieff Morris made a ton of threes, played really good defense. He was chipping in 15, 16, 20 points, was getting really hot, and I think now is starting to look like a true factor for the Lakers.
Yeah, I think he'll probably go back to the bench for this series against Denver, but that's a good point. I remember watching one of the games. I forget which game it was because it was so long ago, that he hit 4 threes in the first quarter and was really automatic, the hottest I've ever seen him play.
Yeah, I mean, he played fantastic, and I think was definitely a good reason why the Lakers were able to beat the Rockets. So, yep, that is our players of the week, per usual, like we always do on Ball Don't Lie. Next, we're going to talk about the Nuggets and Clippers series. Obviously, if for whatever reason didn't watch the game or didn't know what happened, the Nuggets ended up coming back from 3-1 for the second time in this playoffs. No team has ever done that in NBA history. They ended up beating the Clippers 104-89, even though the score was 56-54 at halftime. So they ran away with this game. Jamal Murray, like we said, 40 points, 25 alone in the first half. Kawhi Leonard and Pandemic P definitely struggled a bit here. 14 points for Kawhi Leonard on 6 of 22 shooting. And then Paul George only 10 points on 4 of 16 shooting. And then the Clippers, like usual, coming up with all these excuses after the game, saying that they were out of shape, they were sluggish. Paul George said it wasn't a championship or bust season. Matt, what the hell is that all about? Isn't this why you came to the Clippers?
Yeah, you'd think that this would be a championship or bust season. If you don't have those expectations for yourself, especially with that roster, what were you expecting?
Yeah, I was when he said that, Paul George may be the worst sore loser I've ever seen in basketball. This guy just comes up with excuse after excuse why, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, this was a team that was expected to compete for a championship and at least go to the conference finals and have their shot at the Los Angeles Lakers. They're not even going to get that because they blew it against a young Denver Nuggets team. Paul George, he did have some good games in this series. Let's give credit where it's due. He was plausible, P, like I said on Monday's podcast segment. And then DJ Morrissey, too, one of our former Sports Night members, on our segment on Monday, he said that, that the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are both free agents after the next following season. So this is your window now. So, it is championship or bust. Everyone's in their prime on that team. This is a team that was constructed to win a championship. They didn't trade for Marcus Morris and sign Reggie Jackson at the deadline for nothing. They didn't give up all their assets to get Paul George for nothing. They're doing this because they're trying to win a championship, and you got to start acting like it because right now they have a loser's mentality.
I definitely agree with it. They definitely have a loser's mentality. I'm not sure where it's coming from because Doc Rivers definitely has that championship mentality. He's a great coach. I think it's really coming from within. I think it's coming from them feeling like they're better than they are. They had this attitude and aura around them all season that they were better than they were and that they were cocky for no reason, like Patrick Beverly and Paul George. They hadn't won anything yet, and they were just acting like they owned the league.
Yeah, it's a good point. And Matt, I remember you said on our podcast last week, like, when are the Clippers going to turn it on? And they didn't. They didn't turn it on really all season. They weren't dominating the way we saw other elite teams dominate. I think they just kind of banked on the talent eventually just clicking. Now, they've had injuries, of course. They weren't all on the court for various parts of the season at consistent times, but that's not an excuse at this point. I mean, you're a better team than the Nuggets, and you let them come back 3-1, win 3 in a row, and beat you. I mean, that's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, it's definitely embarrassing. But give credit where credit's due. The Nuggets have come back from 3-1 deficits in back-to-back series. That's pretty impressive. And, for the Clippers saying they were fatigued at the end of the game, how are the Nuggets not fatigued? They've just played back-to-back 7-game series.
It's ridiculous here. I don't even know what to say. I mean, if you're the Clippers, I kind of wonder, like, where do you go from here? I mean, I guess you just run it back with the same roster, but I don't know, Matt. Do you make any other acquisitions at all?
Well, I mean, they could make some small additions like the Marcus Morris and Reggie Jackson move were this year. But I think at the end of the day, it's not really what they add or take away from this team. It's their attitude and Paul George not sucking and Kawhi Leonard not going 6 for 22 in a game 7. I think it just all really comes down to that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that's a good point. I think they're pretty much going to have the same team as they had next year. I don't know how many more moves they can possibly make. But let's start ragging on the Clippers, and let's give the Denver Nuggets some credit here because I'll be honest with you, I did not think they were going to go to the Western Conference Finals. In fact, I thought there was a good chance they were going to lose to Utah. It was not looking good for them, but they played their best when the moments are the brightest, and particularly Jamal Murray. So I came up with a little game, Matt. It's called Would You Rather, basically either Jamal Murray or another guard. Basically, who would you rather take? So first, Matt, would you rather take Jamal Murray or Trae Young?
I would personally say Jamal Murray right now just because Trae Young, he hasn't really proven anything other than he can score in bunches and take a lot of shots and shoot from really far distances. But Jamal Murray's a far more efficient player, and I think he's a better team player in terms of defensively as well, because as we all know, Trae Young struggles a lot defensively.
Oh, yeah.
And I think also Jamal Murray plays a lot better with Nikola Jokic, and we haven't really seen Trae Young play well with anybody yet.
I agree with that too. I was debating this one a little bit because I do really think Trae Young is going to be like a superstar in this league. But right now, I'm gonna go Jamal because we've seen him do it in the playoffs. And Trae Young is still a question mark there. Next up, Jamal Murray or Kemba Walker?
That's a good one. I think I'm gonna say Kemba Walker just because he is more of a veteran and he has proven that he's got the ice in the veins just like Murray does. But Walker, I think I'd want Walker in the clutch more often than I would want Jamal Murray, just because Murray is younger. Murray has proven it's nothing against Murray, it's nothing Murray hasn't done. It's just the Kemba, man. It's Kemba Walker. He's earned that contract, and that's a tough one though.
Yeah, this was also a tough one. I didn't want to make it easy on you. I think entering the playoffs, I definitely would have said Kemba. I think I'm saying Jamal Murray now. It's hard, but what Jamal's been doing these last couple series, I mean, this is unprecedented stuff. This is stuff that we haven't really seen before, from a player this young. I know he hasn't made an all-star game. I kind of wonder, can this translate into the regular season next year? Is he going to be an all-star in a stacked Western Conference? Is he going to, increase that scoring by a lot? I'm not sure. It's a wait and see, but he plays his best when the lights are the brightest. So I'm actually leaning right now toward Jamal Murray, as crazy as that sounds. All right, next up on this list, I'm going to make you shake a little bit here. Jamal Murray or Ben Simmons?
I want to say Ben Simmons so bad. I really, really do because he's so strong defensively and everything else he does on the basketball court except for shooting the basketball. He is so efficient and so talented at it. I think I'm just going to say no comment. I'm not.
All right. I'm picking Jamal Murray again here. Because Ben Simmons, I haven't seen it in the playoffs. That's really it at the end of the day.
He's played well in the playoffs except for that one time. But here's the thing.
He's not bad, but I think Jamal Murray, he elevates. I think Ben Simmons just plays slightly better, if that.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I had Ben Simmons on my All-NBA ballot if I were a media member, so I respect Ben Simmons a lot. I think he takes a little too much heat. I do. I generally think that. But what I've seen from Jamal Murray in these playoffs, I mean, not everyone can do that. I mean, the guts he's had is insane. It's not really a diss to Ben Simmons. I think I'm just sipping on that Jamal Murray Kool-Aid right now.
I think maybe a little bit too, but that's okay.
All right. Next one here. Jamal Murray or Devin Booker?
I think I'll take Devin Booker this one. I think this is the most comfortable I've been in taking another player other than Jamal Murray just because Devin Booker is such an efficient scorer. And I think if you put Devin Booker in Jamal Murray's situation and Jamal Murray in Devin Booker's situation, I think Jamal Murray would struggle a lot more. And I think that Devin Booker would maybe shine a little bit more in Denver with those pieces around him, even though Devin Booker isn't really like a point guard like Jamal Murray is. I do think Booker is a more efficient scorer and a more consistent scorer.
I agree with you. I actually would also take Devin Booker for pretty much the same reasons. I think that Devin Booker can more so carry a team a little bit more. You also can't forget Murray does have Jokic there, who I think he's the best player on that team. It's not Jamal Murray. Murray may be the best scorer, arguably, but Jokic is the guy. And the offense runs through him. Booker, I mean, we saw him. They went 8-0 in the bubble. They didn't get their chance to make the playoffs, but I think the Suns will be a lot better next year, and Devin Booker will have a big year in his own right. So I am actually going to agree with you there. And then last but not least, this wasn't on the list, but Jamal Murray or Donovan Mitchell?
Jamal Murray. I think.
Really?
Yes, I would take Jamal Murray over Donovan Mitchell because here's the thing with Mitchell. He was fantastic in these playoffs. It's nothing that he didn't do in the playoffs. I think in the regular season, though, I think Murray is the same thing I said about Booker. He's a more efficient and consistent scorer than Donovan Mitchell is. Donovan Mitchell will go on stretches where he struggles mightily shooting from downtown, as does Murray. But I think Murray is a more volume shooter in terms of three-pointers, a more efficient scorer.
I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna go Donovan Mitchell here. Only because I get what you're saying, but I think Murray also gets cleaner looks than McMitchell. Like, who's helping Donovan Mitchell on that team, like scoring wise? Jordan Clarkson. That's your guy. That's gonna really help him out. And you talk about efficiency, Jordan Clarkson, and Rudy Gobert. That guy can't shoot outside of 5 feet. So I think Donovan Mitchell, he's not as efficient because I don't think he has much help around him. Like, the Nuggets are probably a better basketball team. They have more shooters. They have more guys that can create. And Donovan Mitchell, a lot of times, is double teamed. He has to spin out, shoot fadeaways, and really work for his shot more so than Jamal Murray does because he got a great passer in Jokic and other guys. So I actually am going to go Donovan Mitchell here.
Yeah, and that's fair. I will say with Mitchell, too, he wasn't forced into those double teams and, contested shots as much outside of the bubble during the regular season. They still had Bogdanovich on the roster because he's obviously the shooter that they commented with him with. But then he had that surgery and was forced to miss all that time in the bubble. So, yeah.
All right. Well, agree to disagree. But yeah, obviously losing Bojan Bogdanovic, that was a big loss for Utah, and they had a little bit of a difficult time really trying to generate that same offensive firepower. So let's talk about Jokic now. Do you think what we've seen from the playoffs this year, even last year as well, would you call him the best center in basketball right now? This is a hard one for you.
It is. Talent-wise, no. I think Embiid is still a little bit better than him in terms of his all-around game, offense, defense. Jokic can definitely pass better than him. He can definitely dribble better than Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid constantly dribbles off his foot. It's the most annoying thing ever. But in terms of who's got more talent, who's the better one, overall, I still think it's Embiid. But Jokic has definitely made that a much closer debate during these playoffs, especially since he stayed in the playoffs for a much larger considerable time than Embiid did. And I think I think you can't undervalue his passing that like we just talked about, and he's consistently put up 25-something points a game. So I think Jokic has definitely made that debate a little bit closer, but I'm still taking Embiid.
Yeah, this one's tough. I typically do side with Embiid on this one because I think that Embiid, when he's dominating, it's, I think, harder to stop. But I'm actually going with Jokic now because I just think it's close. I can go either way on that one. Maybe, if I see something different. And it's not entirely Embiid's fault because I think that his teammates let him down too. But he got swept by the Celtics. I mean, and then meanwhile, you have Jokic coming back from 2-3-1 deficits. And I know it's a team game, obviously. I think the Nuggets are also a better team than the Sixers were this year. But Jokic played really well in those games, and he showed, too, that he's not just like a okay scorer. He can be a great scorer when he wants to be, but he's a pass-first guy, kind of like a LeBron, if you will. LeBron's a pass-first player, but he can score whenever he wants. Jokic is not as good, but, like, Jokic has shown that ability as well to elevate and take his shot and make big shots when he needs to. Not dissing Embiid here, but I just think Jokic rises up to the occasion a little more than Embiid does, and that's why I'm currently going to say Jokic is a slightly better player and then therefore the best center in basketball because those are the only two guys I debate.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely say that in terms of Jokic showing up more for his team. But as we said earlier, I mean, you said it, obviously the team game. Embiid didn't have as much help as Jokic does. He was pretty much out there by himself in that Celtics series. And I did have to pull up stats for this one. Embiid,
you did.
In those 4 games in the playoffs, he had 3 30-point games, and he had a double-double in every one of those games. So you can't really say it was his fault that they didn't win that series. He did everything he could.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it was entirely his fault. I said that. Like, I mean, he played pretty well. He's supposed to dominate against a small Celtics team, and he did. I don't know. You want to check those shooting percentages because I don't think they were.
No, we're not going to
some of those games.
Percentages. No, that's not. I was going strictly for points. Shooting percentages are not important, especially when he is 47% from the field. So we're not going to talk about that.
Okay. Just wanted to bring that up. Just because I remember watching those games. I'm like, I mean, yeah, maybe he had to. Like again, he was getting double teams. They were making it easy out of Boston. So again, I don't think it's entirely his fault. But I don't know. I kind of respect what Denver's doing right now. So I'm gonna go with Jokic. And looking at this team right now, do you think that hey, maybe they win the championship this year. Who knows? But do you think that the Nuggets can build a championship roster around like their current core group of guys?
I think they can. I do think that they have a good team in terms of depth with Craig and Monty Morris and Gary Harris. I think his name is Gary Harris. And oh my God, what's his name? Jeremy Grant, former Process Sixer great. I think they do have some good depth, but I do think they do need that third scoring option, similar to a Bogdanovich type in Utah. Not a guy who's a star, but someone who could fit really well in that role as a volume scorer and that wing forward role.
I think they have that guy, though. I mean, maybe he's not there yet, but Michael Porter Jr., he may become that guy. And they also have Will Barton, who I think is out for the year, but
he is
they have
out.
him too, and they haven't had him. It seems they're a deep team. They have a lot of, but like deep, not in terms of like, oh, they just have a lot of good players. Like they have guys that can really play well. Like Monty Morris has had some great games in the playoffs. Paul Millsap and Jeremy Grant at the forward spots, but they're able to do on both ends of the floor. Gary Harris, I mean, he's been playing a little bit better offensively, but he's really like their defensive stopper on the wing. And then maybe Bol can turn to something in a couple of years. My guy Bol.
The people want Bol.
The people want Bol, and he's not playing it. It's making me upset. And Mason Plumlee too. Mason Plumlee may be like one of the best backup centers in the NBA. Like
but I didn't know which Plumlee it was. So
yeah, Mason Plumlee, very good passer, very good ball handler. Not really the scorer or shooter that Jokic is, but he's more athletic. Can really protect the rim, run end to end. That's another like interesting, weird weapon that the Nuggets have. They have all these like weird pieces. Like Jamal Murray's like this like two guard, but he's only like 6'3", but he can kind of pass. And Jokic is like the 7-foot like point guard, basically. Like they have all these like really weird weapons, but like it all works. And I gotta give credit to Mike Malone too. He was a really good head coach in Sacramento, got wrongfully fired there, and he's shown everyone why he deserves to be a head coach with Denver.
Yeah, and I think the team is really rallied around him. You saw that video last night where they all were celebrating with him when he walked into the locker room. It seems like they genuinely like him as their coach. And getting wrongfully fired from Sacramento, who hasn't been wrongfully fired from Sacramento?
Yeah, and he's using that just for men too. It seems like he's starting to grow his hair back, so that's good. Looks good, Mike. And then last but not least, talking about the Nuggets here, they're obviously going to be playing the Lakers. For Game 1 is going to be Friday night at 9 p.m. Matt, how do you think they're going to fare against LA?
I think Denver's going to be heavy underdogs in this series against the Lakers, as we all could predict. But I do think the Nuggets are going to continue to shock everybody. I don't know if they'll go 7 games this series or win this series, but I do think they'll take the Lakers to 6 before eventually losing. I just think the Lakers are a better team overall. The Nuggets have had a really great run, and I think they'll put up a better fight than most people believe they will. But I do think it's a Lakers series to lose.
I agree. I think it is Lakers series lose. Here, Matt said it. I'm not just being a biased Laker fan here. But the Denver Nuggets have played great. But again, the Lakers it looks like the Lakers have hit their stride. It's looking like they are starting to really click again, like we saw before the bubble. They struggled a little bit in the regular season, in the bubble, if you will. But they're really starting to pick it up again. And I think that they have a lot of guys they can put on Jokic. They have a lot of guys they can put on Jamal Murray. And those guys still may play well, but I think they're going to make it really difficult on them. And I think, again, the Lakers are a better team. I think they're ultimately going to win this series too.
Yeah, and, in terms of LeBron James, too, who's going to guard LeBron? Who's going to guard LeBron?
Who's guarding LeBron? Who's guarding Anthony Davis? I mean, that's also a good point.
Yeah.
No one really has an answer for either of those two guys so far. But obviously, not only the Nuggets and Clippers, but Game 1 of the Celtics-Heat was also last night. And this one really could have went either way. This was a great game. And like we said, Butler, he got the and one. Bam had a bye with the rejection at the rim in overtime that ended up giving him the 117, the 114 win over Boston. Heat's role players also really stepping up big here. Goran Dragic with 29, Jay Crowder with 22, Tyler Hero 12 points off the bench. Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, both combined for 56 points. Obviously, that was not enough. Do you think the Celtics are going to be able to rebound here?
I do. I expect this to be a tight series, even though the Heat haven't really played any tight series. They obviously swept Indiana. Gentlemen's sweep against Milwaukee. They're 9-1 in the playoffs so far, but I do expect this series to be a lot more tight. I fully expect this series to go 7 games. And, in terms of the game last night, too, it was obviously one of the best basketball games the NBA has had in the bubble. It was a true back-and-forth matchup with the Heat coming back from 2 separate double-digit deficits to win the game in OT. And then I have a question for you, Hunter. Do you think that Jimmy Butler is the most clutch player in the league right now? And if not, who else would you want with the ball in his hand for the game on the line?
He's one of them. He's definitely one of them. I'm not betting against LeBron personally. I think he's got to be number 1 on that list. I'd have to say I know he had a bad game 7, but I'd have to say Kawhi is number 2,
Right.
because again, like we saw it all of last year, and even years past. But after that, maybe Jimmy Butler. I mean, I think Chris Paul's really clutch too. We saw I think he led the league in clutch points this year in the NBA. I know he hasn't won a championship. We give him slack for that, but he always steps up in the lights of the brightest too. I mean, maybe when he's healthy, like Kevin Durant, and Damian Lillard, obviously, let's give that man props also. But Jimmy Butler's right in that conversation. And again, he's a guy who doesn't always have the greatest numbers. Like, I think he averaged like 20 points in the regular season. That's not even close to what his career high is. But he just makes winning plays. He's a winner. That's what he's proven this year. I think we talked about last week how his reputation was terrible. Like, people were like, he's a cancer to the locker room. He's not a team player, doesn't make players better. And look what he's done with the Miami Heat this year. Even if they don't make it to the NBA Finals, this is a successful season for Miami, a team that didn't even make the playoffs last year. They bring in Jimmy Butler, and it makes a world's difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. But, I mean, Butler has shown The reason I asked that question is because, I remember him having those clutch shots in the Sixers last year.
That's
I think
true.
one of his first games with the Sixers, buzzer beater 3. And then he was really consistent in the playoffs with getting clutch shots off and, Jimmy time, like we called it at the end of the game when he would just take over. But people forget this before Kawhi hit that ridiculous buzzer beater against us in Game 7. Butler did tie that game on a driving layup where he ran all the way down the court to tie it up.
That's right. Yep.
And then, of course, in the playoffs this year, he's done similar things where he's taken over the end of games and really, really come in clutch when they needed him to.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler, I agree. He's one of the most clutch players in the league. Both ends of the floor, too. Obviously, he's an all-NBA defender, too. And I like calling him like a gamer. Bam Adebayo is kind of the same way. Like, they're gamers. They do whatever they have to do to win. They'll take on whatever role they have to take, and they'll do that role. If Jimmy Butler has to score 35 points, he'll score 35 points. If he has to guard the best player on the other team, he'll guard the best player on the other team. He's not afraid to get in your face. He addresses things the way it has to be. And Miami Heat, they all have embraced each other, and they have great team chemistry. Really well head coach team by Eric Spoelstra, who has won 3 championships too. This is a winning organization. Jimmy Butler just fit it perfectly.
I agree. And, another thing in terms of this culture down there in Miami is you never hear them complain. You never hear them make excuses for anything. And I think that goes a long way too. You see with the Clippers where it seemed like everybody and their mother on their team was making an excuse or complaining about something. But you never see that. You never see that with me. Excuse me. You never see that with Miami. So.
Yeah, I think that just shows you too, like, team chemistry matters. The Clippers didn't have it. They didn't have that winning mentality. The Heat, maybe a less talented team, but they had the chemistry and they clicked, and that's why we're seeing them succeed the way they have.
Absolutely.
So last but not least, actually no, sorry. Let's talk about the Raptors a little bit here. I said we talk about them earlier in the podcast. Again, they lose Game 7 to the Boston Celtics. A lot of questions now surrounding the Toronto Raptors. I want to ask you first, Matt. I do know your answer here, but do you think Pascal Siakam can ever become a true number 1 option?
No, I don't. And especially since he has never been the number 1 option, I think it's been Kyle Lowry this year. At times, Siakam may have been the number 1 option during the regular season, but I do think Kyle Lowry is the number 1 option on that team right now. And obviously last year was Kawhi Leonard. So I think based off of his performance in these playoffs especially, he's absolutely not. He's not a consistent enough shooter at the end of the day. He definitely benefited from having great players around him last year, great shooters around him last year and this year. I just don't think he has it in him to be the number 1 guy.
I agree. I think he can become a great number 2. And I guess we saw that, emerging with the Raptors last year when Kawhi Leonard was there. I think he's a great player. I think he's a great talent. He's an all-star player and deservingly so. But I do agree with you. I think he's more so served as another elite player on a team, not the guy. So I agree with you on that. So if he can't be that guy, who do the Raptors get to potentially fill that role?
Well, you brought up Giannis last week, but that would obviously fix everything. Other than that, though, maybe swing a deal for someone like Bradley Beal with Fred VanVleet likely leaving in free agency, with the Knicks probably going to throw $35 million at him. I think that I think Bradley Beal will be really interesting, but I think, obviously they would have to give some assets to get him. But I do think he'd be a good fit for that team.
That's a good name, Bradley Beal, to throw out there. Maybe if Devin Booker gets really upset with being with Phoenix, maybe he's a guy who can potentially go there. Giannis, again, I think that's one that has been reported. They're interested in getting him.
Yep.
I think he fits that organization really well. How do you see a potential? Because I highly doubt they give up Pascal to get him. They probably want both of them there. How do you see those two playing together hypothetically?
Who, Beal and Siakam?
Pascal Siakam and Giannis.
Oh goodness. I think it'd be a strange fit, much like we brought up last week, Giannis and Porzingis, if that were to happen in Dallas. But I think it'd be a strange fit. But I think it would definitely work out. Because Giannis is, he can stand in the paint, guard the paint, dominate in the paint, but Siakam can go out a little bit further. You've seen him take probably more 3-pointers than Giannis does. I think it would be an interesting fit, but I do think they could definitely make it work. And if not, they could probably trade Siakam for a nice piece like a shooter, like a Bradley Beal or a Devin Booker.
Yeah, I think defensively it's a great fit. Pascal and Giannis can guard pretty much every position, at least in a pinch. And offensively, Pascal, like you said, is a little more rangy. He can hit threes in volume per se. Giannis not as much. I think Giannis, I would like to see him at the 5 maybe, because he's capable of doing that. I mean, if you had Kyle Lowry, running point there, whoever, or maybe they keep Van Vliet, I don't know. And then Pascal and Giannis as your 4 or 5, I think that could be really interesting. And that would be, I mean, from like a up and down fast break team, that'd be deadly.
That's an extremely lucky team. Obviously we didn't see the length work for the Sixers this year, but I think, with a team like with the Raptors, where if they were to able to have that great coach in Nick Nurse, he would obviously be able to draw up plenty of schemes for them. I don't think it'd be an issue there.
Yeah, and then last but not least, obviously, I think the Raptors, they've been winning a ton of games. They finally got that NBA championship. They had a revival season this year. They were better than a lot of people thought. Not me. I thought they'd be a top 3 seed in the East. I said that on this podcast before the season started, so I'm not going to sit here and whatever. I'm not going to brag too much. But I will say, though, do you think the Raptors, with the way they've kind of built their organization up, I think Toronto's a pretty into it city. Do you think they could become a potential free agent destination, perhaps?
I think it can be, just because they've shown how great of a team they are, with a lot of great chemistry, team basketball, obviously, and one of the top coaches in front. And, in the front offices, too, in the NBA right now. People don't mention enough, I feel like, that front office and how much that team loves playing for that entire organization and for that city. Everybody that plays there has never talked bad about Toronto, never talked bad about the fans. I think overall it's a great destination for free agents potentially to look at in the future when they might not have in the past.
Yeah, Masai Ujiri. I mean, this guy always builds great teams wherever he goes, and he did that with the Raptors. Even after Kawhi Leonard left, they still were winning games, and that's that just shows you they're a winning team. It wasn't just the Kawhi show there. They had other guys that can step up and really play well also, and maybe a potential star can look at that and be like, I can be that missing piece that brings them a championship again. And yeah, I think that people want to win games, and the Raptors have a really loyal, strong fan base too. Like you said, a lot of people really like playing for the Raptors and playing for that organization. So I definitely think they can totally become a landing spot for a free agent or a trade acquisition, perhaps.
Yep.
And last but not least, we always give our all NBA teams. Today is going to be all NBA Conference Finals X Factor team. So me and Matt both compiled lists. Again, we did not tell each other what these lists are, but we each came up with 5 players that can maybe be the key difference between these 2 series that we're about to see. So Matt, who is number 1 on your list?
Number 1 on my list is from the Miami Heat, Tyler Hero. We talked about him a little bit earlier. He hit a clutch 3 last night in the 4th to cut the deficit to just 2 with a minute remaining in that game. It seems like this kid has been hitting clutch shot after clutch shot for this team this season. He's not, and the big thing, he's not afraid of the moment. He's a rookie. He's a young guy, probably around our age, I think. And he's just not
younger.
Yeah. And he could also be tasked with guarding players like Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, or Kemba Walker in this series. I think it'll be big for him to prove that he can play defense well in this series while also shooting volume threes.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Tyler Hero, they play him at the end of games. They trust him out there, and he, is not scared. He embraces the big moments. He's hit big shots. He doesn't look nervous out there. Doesn't really play like a rookie, if you will. And I think the Heat, at I believe the 13th or 14th pick, got to steal again at that spot, like they did with a guy like Bam Adebayo too. So Tyler Hero is pretty good. They call him the Miami Splash Bros. And I also had his other counterpart, Duncan Robinson, on my list. He's been a little streaky against the Bucks, had some great games, but also had some terrible games. He is a guy that when you look at the box score, he took 15 shots and 14 of them are threes. Like, his role on that team is to hit threes. But he's also going to be really solid against the Celtics perimeter because, like you said, all those guys that they have on the perimeter that can score. And Duncan Robinson's a terrible defender. So I think he needs to really step up and be a true factor for the Miami Heat to win this series.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit last week as well, in terms of Eric Spoelstra giving him that vote of confidence, telling him, go out there, play your game, shoot threes for us. And like you said, I think the biggest thing for Duncan Robinson this series is going to be playing defense, like you said, because he does struggle mightily on the defensive end of the floor. And the Celtics obviously have those great wings.
So I think he's definitely going to have to step up. So, Matt, who else is on your list here?
Sticking in the Heat-Celtics series, I'm going to talk about Daniel Tice. Being matched up with Bam Adebayo is a tough assignment for him, and he's severely outmatched in terms of talent. And I thought he was thoroughly dominated by Adebayo in Game 1. If the Celtics want to have a chance in this series, he's going to be forced to play a much bigger role and not complain about every foul that is called on him, and just stay in the game, be able to play good defense. He played decent defense last series, and he came up clutch for them with that clutch dunk at the end of Game 3, even though they eventually lost that game. I think he does need to be more aggressive offensively. I understand Bam Adebayo is a terrific defender, but only having 4 points when you're a starter in the Eastern Conference Finals is not going to cut it.
Yeah, Daniel Tice, I think, is a better player than people actually give him credit for. He's actually not that too shabby of a player, and definitely will have his hands full in this matchup. I'm going to go with the guy. I know it's weird calling him an X Factor because he was an All-Star this year. I think he'll be All-NBA this year, but I'm going Bam Adebayo. And it's for what we saw last night. I mean, Jimmy Butler called him the heart and soul of this team, and we saw him, again, on the defense side of the ball, making a play against one of the hottest offensive players we've seen in the calendar year, in Jason Tatum. And he played great defense there. He can do literally everything on the court, and at that size, it's incredible really to watch him play. And I think he's really going to have to show that he's that true number 2 guy on Miami and really step up, I think, for them to beat the Celtics.
Yeah, that I think definitely. I mean, he showed it last night, Bam Adebayo, with that block at the end of the game. He's shown how valuable he is to that team. And, maybe he was a under-the-radar kind of guy coming into the season, but he's definitely not under the radar now.
Do you have anyone else in that series on your list? I'm just curious.
I do not.
All right, I have one more, and this is if he even plays, and that's Gordon Hayward.
Yes.
If Gordon Hayward comes back in this series, and he can do what he was doing beforehand, that is a big, big acquisition that the Celtics are going to have. They've been winning games without him, but Gordon Hayward's a really good player. Obviously, his road to redemption, we saw what happened a couple years ago with the gruesome leg injury. He's been getting better and better since. And if they have another guy, I think that may be a little much for Miami to contain.
Yeah, I think if Gordon Hayward does come back in the series, I think, like you said, he will be their X factor. I think if they do lose Game 2, I think they're going to probably force Gordon Hayward back into coming back a little bit sooner.
All right. And who else do you have on your list?
So my third player is from the Lakers, Danny Green. He has been pretty putrid shooting the 3-ball for LA during the playoffs. And as is the case with any LeBron team, he needs a big-time 3-point shooter. They signed Danny Green to be that guy. It's time for him to step up. And there's also a solid chance that he could be assigned to guard guys like Jamal Murray in the Nuggets series, since Green is touted as a pretty decent defender. He's made an All-NBA team once or twice in his lifetime. So I do think that they're going to need much more from him.
I agree. Danny Green, he's starting to play a little better. He finished that Rocket series pretty well. A little rough against Portland offensively, but starting to find a shot. Also, he always gets people with a pump fake little floater he's got. Also cutting without the ball and being able to get easy baskets there. And like you said, he's a 2-time champion with 2 different teams. He has plenty of finals experience. So this is a guy that the Lakers really need to rely on, especially, again, because they're going to have another good guard that they're going to have to face in Jamal Murray.
Absolutely.
I also have a Laker on my list. I'm going to go with his other backcourt mate in the starting lineup. That's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He's a guy who is probably a little worse than Danny Green, but he's a guy that can get hot in a hurry too. We've seen him in the playoffs actually have some pretty good offensive games. And he's a guy also, I'm not saying he's their number 3 option. He's not. But if Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is hitting threes in a hurry, I've always said the Lakers, you're not beating of their hitting threes. So if Kentavious Caldwell-Pope can be a consistent guy there, I think that's a whole, other thing that teams have to worry about.
Yeah, I think we had a really similar mindset in that, where you just said, if they're hitting threes, they're tough to beat. Obviously said that with Danny Green, but KCP is another guy like that. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on him.
Mm-hmm. All right, Matt, who else do you have on your list?
From the Denver Nuggets, I have Jeremy Grant, former process legend, as I said earlier. He plays pretty decent defense and will likely find himself guarding LeBron at some point during this series. He's not a fantastic three-point shooter, but he can hit a few shots. Don't be surprised when you hear his name a lot during this series.
Yeah, Jeremy Grant, and he's probably going to get the task of guarding LeBron and Anthony Davis. He's going to have his hands full defensively, so he's really going to have to step up. I also have a Denver Nuggets player as well, and I talked about him earlier, and that's Michael Porter Jr. Like you said, we know Jokic, we know Murray. Those two guys are going to step up. Can they get a third scorer? And I think the guy most capable of doing that is, in fact, Michael Porter Jr. He was great in the regular season. He's had some good games here. I know he says some crazy stuff sometimes, basically calling out his coaching staff in the middle of a series, but that didn't affect him. He stepped up as a result. And he asked for more shots, and he got it, and he came through. So, I mean, give the guy credit where it's due. He's a really young, talented player. I think, the ceiling is the roof, like Michael Jordan likes to say. And I think that, Michael Porter Jr., again, probably going to have his hands full defensively too, but offensively they're going to need a spark off the bench.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting to watch with MPJ there coming off the bench, especially in his first real NBA action after suffering that gruesome back injury in college. And then my final player here for X Factors is actually a tandem. I have two guys from the Lakers who did not play much last series, and that's JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. They could find themselves matched up with Jokic if Vogel doesn't decide to put AD on him. That fact alone makes them huge X factors in the series, coming off of a series where they didn't have to play that much because the Rockets didn't have a center. Now being tasked with guarding probably the best center in the Western Conference, I think it's going to be imperative that they try to shut him down because they are two of the better defensive centers in the NBA.
Yeah, we actually saw earlier this season, Jokic got thrown out of the Laker game because he was pissed off. And I think a big reason why was because JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard made it hard on him. That's what they got to do. Lakers don't need them to score a whole lot of points. You'll get your easy lobs, get your offensive rebounds and stuff like that. That's obviously what their games are. But defensively, box it out, make it hard on Jokic. They each got 6 fouls, use them. I think that's what the Lakers have to do. They have to go after Jokic and force the ball out of his hands.
I think you're absolutely right. And obviously they're both touted as pretty efficient guys around the rim. Maybe the big thing for them is going to be becoming more comfortable guarding outside of the paint, because Jokic typically finds himself around the 3-point line, shooting and facilitating the basketball. So it'll be interesting to see how they guard him there.
Yeah, I maybe saw a glimpse of it, how they guarded guys like Yusuf Nurkic against Portland. Obviously, Houston's a completely different beast with the perimeter stuff, and they fared pretty well against those guys. But obviously, we'll have to wait and see. Like we said, the Eastern Conference Finals already started in the East. Tomorrow it's going to start in the West, or Friday it's going to start in the West. That's going to do it here on the 20th episode of Ball Don't Lie. We appreciate all the love and support. And don't worry, because we'll be back next week. Keep putting out that content.
Thank you. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching our latest edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also follow us on Twitter at PSSNTV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.